Everybody, we're reading Chapter 3 of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. On his way to work, Rick Deckard, as Lord knew how many other people, stopped briefly to skulk about in front of one of San Francisco's larger pet shops, along Animal Row. In the center of the block-long display window, an ostrich in a heated, clear plastic cage returned his stare. The bird, according to the info plaque attached to the cage, had just arrived from a zoo in Cleveland. It was the only ostrich on the West Coast. After staring at it, Rick spent a few more minutes staring grimly at the price tag. He then continued on to the Hall of Justice on Lombard Street and found himself a quarter of an hour late to work. Okay, so in your journals, remember he had just had this conversation with his neighbor in chapter 1 about wanting his horse's foal that he was going to give birth, or she was going to give birth to, being so upset that he has this electric sheep. So on his way to work, he has that sort of just depressed lull as he goes about, and just pauses to look through the windows instead of how much is that puppy in the window, how much is that ostrich in the window. And not only is it that status symbols he's wanting, it's showing that he has the money to have a real animal. But remember, they don't have tons of human interaction. Most of the humans are either dead or they went to Mars. So the animal also provides more empathy, more interaction emotionally with something else as well. So, and remember, his job is as a bounty hunter, so we know he's on his way to work, and we're going to learn more about what he does at work. As he unlocked his office door, his superior, Police Inspector Harry Bryant, jug-eared and red-headed, sloppily dressed but wise-eyed and conscious of nearly everything of any importance, hailed him. "Meet me at 9:30 in Dave Holden's office." Inspector Bryant, as he spoke, flicked briefly through a clipboard of onion skin typed sheets. "Holden," he continued as he started off, "is in Mount Zion Hospital with a laser attack through his spine. He'll be there for a month at least, until they can get one of those new organic plastic spinal sections to take hold." "What happened?" Rick asked, chilled. The department's chief bounty hunter had been all right yesterday. At the end of the day, he had, as usual, zipped off in his hover car to his apartment in the crowded, high, prestige Nob Hill area of the city. So, two things we know. One, Deckard had been bemoaning the fact that he needed at least 5 Andes to buy what he wanted from a real animal, and he'd only get that many if the head bounty hunter wasn't in charge anymore. And all of a sudden, the head bounty hunter, he's in the hospital, so Rick's probably going to get all these jobs now, so we're going to be hunting more androids within there. But we also know they mentioned a hover car. So to add to our understanding of the setting and the technology that's happening, they have the tech available for hover cars going everywhere. Bryant muttered over his shoulder something about 9:30 in Dave's office and departed, leaving Rick standing alone. As he entered his own office, Rick heard the voice of his secretary, Ann Marston, behind him. "Mr. Deckard, you know what happened to Mr. Holden? He got shot." She followed after him into the stuffy, closed-up office and set the air filtering unit into motion. "Yeah," he responded absently. "It must have been one of those new, extra clever Andes the Rosin Association is turning out," Miss Marston said. "Did you read over the company's brochure and the spec sheets? The Nexus 6 brain unit they're using now is capable of selecting within a field of 2 trillion constituents, or 10 million separate neural pathways." She lowered her voice. "You missed the vid call this morning. Miss Wilde told me. Came through the switchboard exactly at 9. "A call in?" Miss Marston said. "A call out by Mr. Bryant to the WPO in Russia, asking them if they'd be willing to file a formal written complaint with the Rosin Association's factory representative east. Harry still wants the Nexus 6 brain unit withdrawn from the market." He felt no surprise. Since the initial release of its specifications and performance charts back in August of 2020, most police agencies which dealt with escaped Andes had been protesting. "The Soviet police can't do any more than we can," he said. "Legally, the manufacturers of the Nexus 6 brain unit operated under colonial law, their parent auto factory being on Mars. We'd better just accept the new unit as a fact of life," he said. "It's always been this way. With every improved brain unit that's come along, I remember the howls of pain when the Suderman people showed their old T-14 back in 18. Every police agency in the Western Hemisphere clamored that no test would detect its presence, in an instance of illegal entry here. As a matter of fact, for a while they were right. Over 50 of the T-14 android, as he recalled, had made their way by one means or another to Earth, and had not been detected for a period, in some cases up to an entire year. But then the Voight empathy test had been devised by the Pavlov Institute working in the Soviet Union. And no T-14 android, insofar at least is well known, had managed to pass that particular test. Okay, so we learned a lot. So, in that, we know that the main type of android comes from the Roslin Association. And with science fiction, they're always going to question and critique our current society. So, the Roslin Association is going to represent that big business that keep pushing and pushing and making new and new and new all the time, and that have all this money and have all this power. So, in your journal, I'll be thinking, what text to world connections can you make with the Roslin Association, this big business that's all about making profit and doing better and better and better and better within there. And so then that Roslin Association is the one who are making the new androids. The Nexus 6 would be the type or the brand of android that Deckard is having to watch out for. It's the newest kind of android, and it's the one that he's going to have to bounty hunt here in a little bit. So in the Nexus 6, they're saying, is so amazing. It has so many neural pathways, or 2 trillion constituents, that it thinks almost exactly like a human. And it's so hard to decipher between an android and a human that there's almost no way we can figure out who's rogue and who's not within there. So there's all this gossip about how are we going to be able to actually police this? How can we actually hunt them if we can't figure out who's an android and who's not? And so even though they haven't come right out and said it, we also know then that these androids are built to look exactly like humans. So you wouldn't know they're an android until you've cut into them and you see the wires or whatever start to spill out. But at the very end of what I read, top of 28, he says that how they figure it out is through a Voight empathy test. And so we're going to learn a bit more about it here in a second, but that's how they initially discovered the T-14 android, was through this empathy test. And he's saying that we'll just keep using it for these new ones. So instead of having to just sort of shoot or cut whoever you think is an android, to discover the androids, the hunters, give them some sort of empathy test. We're going to figure out more about that in a second. So they continue in the middle of 28. Want to know what the Russian police said? Miss Marston asked. I know that too. Her freckled orange face glowed. Rick said, I'll find out from Harry Bryant. He felt irritable. Office gossip annoyed him because it always proved better than the truth. Seating himself at his desk, he pointedly fished about in a drawer until Miss Marston, perceiving the hint, departed. From the drawer, he produced an ancient, creased manila envelope. Leaning back, tilting his important style chair, he rummaged among the contents of the envelope until he came across what he wanted: the collected extant data on the Nexus 6. A moment's reading vindicated Miss Marston's statement. The Nexus 6 did have 2 trillion constituents, plus a choice within a range of 10 million possible combinations of cerebral activity. In 0.45 of a second, an android equipped with such a brain structure could assume any one of 14 basic reaction postures. Well, no intelligence test would trap such an Andy, but then intelligence tests hadn't trapped an Andy in years, not since the primordial crude varieties of the 1970s. The Nexus 6 android types, Rick reflected, surpassed several classes of human specials in terms of intelligence. So he's saying that most of these androids are even smarter than humans. So you can't give them just an IQ test and figure out which is which. So we have to go a different route. And as humans, intelligence, if we can't determine it that way, then we're going to go with empathy, which is what we've been talking about in the first 2 chapters. The emotions is what they're deciding makes us human. In other words, androids equipped with the new Nexus 6 brain unit had, from a sort of rough, pragmatic, no-nonsense standpoint, evolved beyond a major, but inferior, segment of mankind. For better or worse. The servant had in some cases become more adroit than its master. But new scales of achievement, for example, the Voight-Kampff empathy test, had emerged as criteria by which to judge. An android, no matter how gifted as to pure intellectual capacity, could make no sense out of the fusion which took place routinely among the followers of Mercerism, an experience which he and virtually everyone else, including subnormal chicken heads, managed with no difficulty. Okay, so basically, in that very lengthy two sentence, saying that no android is able to experience what humans experience, which is empathy. They can't put themselves in the experience of other people and feel those same emotions as them. So it's an empathy test, is how they pick out and figure out the androids from the humans. He had wondered, as had most people at one time or another, precisely why an android bounced helplessly about when confronted by an empathy measuring test. Empathy, evidently, existed only within the human community, whereas intelligence, to some degree, could be found throughout every phylum and order, including the arachnida. For one thing, the empathic faculty probably required an unimpaired group instinct. A solitary organism, such as a spider, would have no use for it. In fact, it would tend to abort a spider's ability to survive. It would make him conscious of the desire to live on the part of his prey. Hence, all predators, even highly developed mammals such as cats, would starve. So, what they've summed up here is that for empathy to exist, you have to be within a community and have lots of people and be able to see and experience what they're experiencing to then have empathy. Empathy, he once had decided, must be limited to herbivores, or anyhow omnivores, who could depart from a meat diet. Because ultimately, the empathic gift blurred the boundaries between hunter and victim, between the successful and the defeated, as in the fusion with Mercer. Everyone ascended together, or when the cycle had come to an end, fell together into the trough of the tomb world. Oddly, it resembled a sort of biological insurance, but double edged. As long as some creature experienced joy, then the condition for all other creatures included a fragment of joy. However, if any living being suffered, then for all the rest of the shadow cannot entirely cast off. A herd animal, such as man, would acquire a higher survival factor through this. An owl or a cobra would be destroyed. Evidently, the humanoid robot constituted a solitary predator. Rick liked to think of them that way. It made his job palatable. In retiring, i.e., killing, an Andy, he did not violate the rule of life laid down by Mercer. You shall kill only the killers, Mercer had told them the year the empathy boxes first appeared on Earth. And in Mercerism, as it evolved into a full theology, the concept of the killers had grown insidiously. In Mercerism, an absolute evil plucked at the threadbare cloak of the tottering, ascending old man, but it was never clear who or what this evil presence was. A Mercerite sensed evil without understanding it. Put another way, a Mercerite was free to locate the nebulous presence of the killers wherever he saw fit. For Rick Deckard, an escaped humanoid robot, which had killed its master, which had been equipped with an intelligence greater than that of many human beings, which had no regard for animals, which possessed no ability to feel empathic joy for another life form's success or grief at its defeat, that for him epitomized the killers. Thinking about animals reminded him of the ostrich he'd seen in the pet store. Temporarily, he pushed away the specs on the Nexus 6 brain unit, took a pinch of Mrs. Siddon's number 3 and 4 stuff, and cogitated. Then he examined his watch, saw that he had time, and picked up his desk vidphone and said to Miss Marston, "Get me the Happy Dog Pet Shop on Sutter Street." "Yes, sir," Miss Marston said and opened her phone book. They can't really want that much for the ostrich, Rick said to himself. They expect you to car trade like in the old days. "Happy Dog Pet Shop," a man's voice declared, and on Rick's vid screen, a minute happy face appeared. Animals could be heard bawling. "The ostrich that you have in your display window," Rick said. He toyed with a ceramic ashtray before him on the desk. "What sort of down payment would I need for that?" "Let's see," the animal salesman said, groping for a pen and pad of paper. "1/3 down," he figured. "May I ask, sir, if you're going to trade something in?" Guardedly, Rick said, "I haven't decided." "Well, let's say we put the ostrich on a 30-month contract. the salesman said, at a low interest rate of 6% a month. That would make your monthly payment after a reasonable down. You'll have to lower the price you're asking, Rick said. Knock off 2,000 and I won't trade anything in. I'll come up with cash. Dave Holden, he reflected, is out of action. That could mean a great deal, depending on how many assignments show up during the coming month. Sir, the animal salesman said, our asking price is already $1,000 under book. Check your Sydneys. I'll hang on. I want you to see for yourself, sir, that our price is fair. Christ, Rick thought. They're standing firm. However, just for the heck of it, he wiggled his bent Sydneys out of his coat pocket. Thumb to ostrich, comma, male, female, old, young, sick, well, mint used, and inspected the prices. Mint, male, young, well, the salesman informed him. $30,000. He, too, had his Sydneys out. We're exactly 1,000 under book. Now, your down payment... I'll think it over, Rick said, and call you back. He started to hang up. Your name, sir? The salesman asked alertly. Frank Merriwell, Rick said. And your address, Mr. Merriwell, in case I'm not here when you call back. He made up an address and put the VidPhone receiver back on its cradle. All that money, he thought, and yet people buy them. Some people have that kind of money. Picking up the receiver again, he said harshly, Give me an outside line, Miss Marston, and don't listen on the conversation. It's confidential. He glared at her. Yes, sir, Miss Marston said. Go ahead and dial. She then cut herself out of the circuit, leaving him to face the outside world. He dialed, by memory, the number of the false animal shop which he had gotten his ersatz sheep. On the small vid screen, a man dressed up like a vet appeared. Dr. McRae, the man declared. This is Deckard. How much is an electric ostrich? Oh, I'd say we could fix you up for less than $800. How soon did you want delivery? We'd have to make it up for you. There's not much call for... I'll talk to you later. Rick interrupted. Glancing at his watch, he saw that 9:30 had arrived. Goodbye. He hurriedly hung up, rose, and shortly thereafter stood before Inspector Bryant's office door. He passed by Bryant's receptionist, attractive with waist-length braided silver hair, and then the inspector's secretary, an ancient monster from the Jurassic swamp, frozen and sly, like some archaic apparition fixated in the tomb world. Neither woman spoke to him nor he to them. Opening the inner door, he nodded to his superior, who was busy on the phone. Seating himself, he got out the specs on Nexus 6, which he had brought with him, and once more read them over as Inspector Bryant talked away. He felt depressed, and yet logically, because of Dave's sudden disappearance from the work scene, he should be at least guardedly pleased. Okay, so finished chapter 3. So take a second in your journals and try to sum up that chapter in 3 to 4 sentences. So what were the main ideas, the main conflicts? What more have we discovered about androids, about animals, and about Rick's job? And we're starting to see a different side to him even now, because in front of his wife with that mood organ, he could change his mood and be very specific with it. He's not at home. He doesn't have his mood organ now. So how is his mood starting to change the further away he's getting from that technology within there? Okay. So make sure you're answering any journal questions you can, and we'll keep reading chapter 4 tomorrow. So you have a great day.